Lawmakers are back at work today in Washington. A government funding deadline is approaching. Lawmakers have until Thursday to pass a measure to avoid another government shutdown. It's unclear whether they are going to reach a deal in that time.
This comes as infighting continues over the release of a controversial memo by House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes. It alleges misconduct by the FBI in seeking surveillance of former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page.
Today, the House Intelligence Committee will vote on whether to release a Democratic counter memo. But President Trump is already taking aim at the committee's Democratic ranking member, Adam Schiff. This morning, he tweeted, "Little Adam Schiff is one of the biggest liars and leakers in Washington." He goes on to say Adam leaves closed committee hearings to illegally leak confidential information. Must be stopped. For more on this, we turn to Politico's reporter, Kevin Robillard. So, Kevin, first we had little Marco, now we have little Adam. What's the president want on this? Does the White House want the Democratic memo released?
It seems pretty clear that he doesn't. However, it does look like the House Intelligence Committee will probably vote to release that Democratic memo tonight. They voted on this same memo last week and voted not to release it then. They probably wouldn't be holding a second vote unless there was some desire to get it released. And you've seen a number of House GOP lawmakers come out and say that they think the memo should be released in sort of an effort at fairness.
Well, Kevin, as you point out, several prominent Republican lawmakers are rejecting the president's claim that the memo vindicates him in the Russia investigation. So what's their argument here for stepping out of the party line?
I think basically it's, look, this memo was really whipped up by Devin Nunes himself and a few other members of the House Republican caucus and a few, really, if we're being honest, Fox News media personalities, stuff like that, into basically trying to make this into this thing that was somehow going to end the Russia investigation, and Robert Mueller's special counsel office would have to shut down and all this stuff. And really, it's not that. It's alleging that there was wrongdoing involving a visa application. It doesn't really go much further than that. There's certainly nothing here that strikes at the heart of what Mueller is looking at. So I think a lot of those people were just looking at what the memo actually says and saying this doesn't live up to the hype that a lot of Republicans have put behind it, and thus it might just be fair for the Democratic memo to come out as well.
Kevin, it's pretty clear there's kind of like a divide in the Republican Party over how people see this Mueller investigation.
Yeah, I mean, look, Trump in particular wants the Mueller investigation to go away. That's been pretty clear for a very long time now. But many Republicans, including some Trump allies, like South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who's really become a pretty stalwart Trump ally, has also talked a lot about the need to protect Robert Mueller. You haven't yet seen Republicans actually take steps to do so. There's been some pressure from Democrats to say, hey, why don't we pass legislation to protect Mueller if the president tries to fire him, or if the president takes some other step to sort of impede the investigation that's pretty obvious. And we haven't yet seen Republicans jump on board with those Democratic attempts yet. But the more Trump talks about this, the more I think we might see some Republicans, especially in the Senate, being willing to stick their necks out and join their Democrats in some sort of legislation to protect Mueller.
So, Kevin, speaking of the Democrats, what would they accomplish by having their memo released? I mean, wouldn't it be better at this point to let it lie? It doesn't seem that the original memo has caused quite the tempest that, Republicans were hoping. Move on, maybe.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to know because we don't know what the memo says, to know exactly why they want it out there. At this point, it's pretty clear that the Republican memo, while it has raised some questions, hasn't been sort of the earth-shaking document that we were promised. So honestly, I don't quite know why Democrats want this out there, I guess just to get their own counterpoints, into the record.
Kevin, we went through a shutdown just a couple of weeks ago. Are we going to go through another one? I mean, where are they at on coming to a deal here?
It doesn't look like they're particularly close. I think the key question that we have to figure out first is whether House Republicans will vote to continue government funding again. Last time there was an agreement reached between the Freedom Caucus and House leadership to keep the government open. Whether a similar deal can be reached is sort of up in the air. The Freedom Caucus does not like voting for these short-term deals. They think it's something that can be used against them in primaries. They don't like these short-term deals. And right now it looks like House Republicans are planning on yet another short-term deal because that's all they could get out of the Senate. So it's really, that's the first question we have to answer. Because then if the Freedom Caucus isn't willing to back it, if House Republicans can't get their votes of their own, that's when we need to see House Democrats step up and vote for some government funding. And that's where you start getting into a bigger deal, perhaps involving immigration, perhaps involving Dreamers.
I have to tell you, it's hard to be optimistic about this looming government shutdown. Senators John McCain and Chris Coons are introducing a bipartisan immigration proposal. It does protect Dreamers while boosting border security, but it doesn't meet all the president's demands. What is their logic for introducing this now?
I think basically they're just trying to put out, here's a potential compromise. McCain isn't going to be the person who is going to end up being the final word or the final deal maker for Republicans on this. Republicans are too skeptical of his instincts on immigration, going back to the Gang of Eight, and even before that to the attempts to reform the immigration system during George W. Bush's administration. So this isn't going to be the final deal. The White House has already rejected it out of hand, but it's an attempt to just put something on paper and say, hey, here's a deal. This is a potential starting point. And he is getting some Republican backing for it. I believe 27 House Republicans have co-sponsored this bill. So it is something that he could get some momentum for, but this isn't going to be the final solution.
Look, the president said any deal that you come to me with that doesn't include the wall is a waste of my time. Where are lawmakers on this issue? Are they willing to sort of acquiesce and, make a deal, or are they standing firm?
I mean, look, during the last shutdown debate, Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, went to the White House and did offer funding for the wall during that sort of last-ditch attempt to avert the shutdown. Basically, it would have been funding for the wall and some other border security measures in exchange for protections for DACA recipients and, I believe, a pathway to citizenship for them. So there clearly is some wiggle room on the wall. Right now, Schumer has taken that back off the table. But I think, look, if they were really close to getting a big deal, the type of big deal they've sought on immigration for a very long time, I find it very difficult to believe Democrats would really hold it up over the wall, because a lot of them also believe even if they give Trump funding for the wall, it'll never be built. There's so many different eminent domain issues and environmental issues that would delay construction of the wall for a very long time. So I think in the end, Democrats might be willing to give in on the wall, but right now they're still insisting it's off the table.
A lot to work out. Kevin Robillard, thank you so much for your insight.
Great to be on.